I think I now become the presentation that doesn't have any pictures of food in. So for all of us that are feeling really hungry, hopefully this will help, because I'm feeling massively hungry after all those presentations. So you heard earlier that there's a trend in low and no alcohol. And believe it or not, everyone, Britain is leading this trend. I find it really hard to believe. Of all the health trends that we could possibly be at the head of, us, the hardy drinking nation, seem to be in the vanguard of the low and no space. So much so that our festival in January has 3 sponsors, all of whom are Australian and wanting to launch in the UK first. I don't know how that happens, right? How we've managed to do that. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Club Soda and what we do, and then a little bit about the low and no space and some of the research that we've done in it, and we'll take it from there. So as you mentioned, Club Soda's goal is to create a world where nobody feels out of place not drinking. We took a little while to get to that goal because being here today and talking to you isn't exactly what I expected to be doing when I set up Club Soda. So I've got a background in politics. I was elected in my early 20s to local government, which means that the whole of my career has been fueled by really cheap white wine. Some of you may be familiar with that concept. We do it very well in Britain. And I gave up drinking 7.5 years ago. And when I gave up, I realised that when I spoke to lots of my peers and my contemporaries, everyone wanted to know how I did it. And I felt that there was a gap for something that felt a bit like Weight Watchers, but with booze, that would help you do a self-guided journey, whether you were to cut down, stop for a bit, or quit. So I got a small business loan and set up Club Soda in order to provide that sort of service. And Club Soda is basically primarily aimed at a very particular group of people. Now I'm going to use a very medical term here, so I do apologise for that, but basically we're aimed at everyone who's a bit of a dickhead with booze, right? So that's where I was. I suspect there may be some fellow dickheads in the room here today. But basically, anyone who doesn't need face-to-face support, but may be exploring what their relationship is with drinking. And very quickly we grew. So we've actually got 45,000 members now, who are all people changing their drinking habits. But what happened quite early on is I still go to the pub. I actually go to the pub more often than I did when I was drinking because I don't get chucked out quite as often. It's very entertaining. And so people were saying to me, well, you know, in 2015, I've gone to the pub or bar, but all I get is a pint of Coke in a glass shoved at me as if I'm 12 and about to go and wait in the car park for my dad. Why are there no better options? So we did a piece of research called Nudging Pubs, which you can find online. It's nudgingpubs.uk. And rather than putting all the emphasis on the individual to go out and not drink, we wanted to know how we could change the way that venues behave towards their non-drinking customers. Because as far as I'm concerned, right, this is just another dietary preference. But at some points in London, it was easier to get a vegan meal in a restaurant than it was to get an alcohol-free beer. And so somehow there was something wrong. So we did that piece of research, which has suddenly opened up this big world of working with pubs and bars and restaurants, even more so when suddenly things like Heineken Zero and a load of alcohol-free products started to hit the market. And so somewhere along the line, I've become an expert on drinks. And I talk a lot about beer, right, which is hilarious, right, because when I was drinking, I never drank beer. And now I go on beer podcasts. Things that happen when you set up a business. So anyway, so now we do lots of things. We've ignored all the business advice, and we don't do one thing and do it well. We do absolutely tons of things. So we help people change their drinking habits, and we've got a new program coming out this year. We run the Mindful Drinking Festival. Has anyone been to the Mindful Drinking Festival? It's a big alcohol-free drinks festival. Next one is 2 days in January, 18th and 19th of January in the Truman Brewery. It's not a piss up in a brewery. It makes me very proud to be able to say that. But it just shows you that there's this massive strength and swell of change that's happening. But where has all of that come from? And why does it matter? So this has been my problem to date with drinks. So why, when you go out on an evening out and you're not drinking, would you want to be served something that you can get as part of a £4.99 meal deal in a petrol station? I'm not interested. I want pubs and bars and restaurants to be just as interested in my money as they are anyone else's. And my experience, I think, is just as important. And I've been to some Michelin-starred restaurants. Where do they go? which have offered me Coke or lemonade, right, with my meal. So you go to all that length to be so proud of the drinks, the drinks and the food that you have, yet the sommelier will happily walk away and offer you nothing that goes with your meal, as if somehow it's really unusual to not drink. And actually, that's not true. There have always been people that don't drink, like the 700,000 pregnant women every year, the people who are driving, the people who don't drink for religious reasons, the people who actually never drank very much to begin with. I never knew any of them when I was drinking, apparently, but they do exist. You know, you'll be surprised, and still yet it's acceptable to treat you as a different customer. So we wanted to change some of that. Now, we built the research. This is one bit of the talk, right, guys, but you can just get your phone out and I won't be upset. Based on all of that research and wanting to drive change, and for me this is really important because whilst trends come, I'm really interested in how we can begin to drive change harder and faster. So based on the research, the Nudging Pub research, we built the first ever Club Soda Guide for mindful drinkers, which is clubsodaguide.com. We built that originally on a really rickety piece of WordPress software using some funding from the City of London Nighttime Economy Levy and from Hackney Council. And the aim was to look at what were the levers that would make pubs and bars change faster. And we realised that public recognition is really important. And actually, you've seen that here today, because getting awards like Michelin stars is very important. So at the back end of our guide is a scoring system for venues, and based on what they input into their profile, they get a score out of 5 for how good they are for mindful drinkers. So you can find pubs near here if you press the little geolocate button on the search bar, and what they score out of 5. We've got the biggest database of no and no alcohol drinks. There are over 1,000 low and no alcohol drinks in that database, and we add about 2 or 3 brands every single week. It shows you how much this space is changing. And we're working with pubs and bars and hotels and restaurants across the country to get them onto this guide. So, and there's a little bit of competition going. So all of the EI group pubs just went up, and now we've got loads of pub chains contacting us because they want to show that they're better than EI group. So there are ways that you can change behaviours in this sector by providing tools to do that. But this guide has also taught us a lot of other things. Now, what's driving some of this? There's a lot of talk about sobriety, and you talked earlier about sober curious. I don't quite know where that fits, but the biggest stat, beyond all those people who are alcohol-free, is looking at the people who are looking to moderate their drinking. And this is probably the biggest trend, right? So 8.6 million people next year will be looking to moderate their drinking. That's only a tiny proportion of the overall drinkers in the UK, but those are the people who in January will go, you know what, I think I'd like to cut down a bit this year. How do I go about it? And people use varying moderation strategies, but the most popular moderation strategy is to take some days off. And generally in Britain, if you want to take some days off drinking, what you do is go, if someone invites you to the pub, you'll go, no, it's all right, I'm not coming tonight because I'm not drinking today. And that's, for me, is a really bad thing, because that means that we're avoiding the pub because we assume it's the place where you can only get wasted, right? And actually, our pubs are far more than that. They're now places to socialise, they are places to get food. They should be welcoming to everybody, whatever your dietary preference. And your drinking habits are just another dietary preference. So don't see this as a very niche thing, see this as a wide thing. Because if you add on top of that all the people who are driving, the people who are just taking a night off because they want to go to the gym tomorrow, the people who have decided that they want to just be a little bit healthier, the market's actually a lot bigger than that, and they're looking for something interesting to drink. More importantly is the people who are buying alcohol-free beer are still people that drink beer. So it's not that suddenly everyone's gone teetotal and they're looking for alcohol-free beer. Those people who buy alcohol are looking for alternatives to hit the spot on the evenings when they're not drinking. So they are looking for alternative drinks. And finally, it's cross-generational. So you'll see that journalists in all the newspapers are scoffing at all the millennials not drinking so much because they're basically 55-year-old men and they can't believe like young people aren't drinking. But actually, it's far more cross-generational than that. So who would have described themselves as a ladette in this room? Oh, come on, guys, I can see you all. There are a few ladettes in this room who felt that the route to equality was always having a pint in the bar in the early to mid-90s. Well, there needs to be a few more hands. Thank you. All the rest are just lying to themselves, right? So just me, you, Zoe Ball. I think that's quite a nice group to be part of, right? So we're the ladettes. We felt that equality was getting as hammered as the blokes. I'd like to think I could have drunk them all under the table. Well, actually, we've decided now that you can eat as much kale as you like, but if you're downing a bottle of wine in the evening, you're undoing all that hard work. So there are multiple drivers here. Young people are drinking less to begin with. The ladette generation have decided they want to cut down for health reasons. And then if you add in sugar-free diets into that mix, you've got a real heady combination of people looking to drink different things. So how do we go about changing this? Right, I've got some notes here because I couldn't remember all of my points. And also because I thought when I gave up drinking, what would improve was my memory and sleeping with inappropriate people. And neither of those things have happened. Very disappointed. So how do you improve availability? So we did some experiments as a part of some research for the Worshipful Company of Brewers to look at how we could sell more low and no alcohol beer. But actually it works for all drink types. And at the minute, actually pubs aren't doing too badly. You can get a kombucha in Green King, for example. Michelin Butlers has an amazing range of alcohol-free beers. But it's still very slow to come through. And we are trying to encourage venues to look at what the business case of improving availability is. And there's a really important reason, and that's because customers want it. So I'm going to hopefully show you a bit of video.
Well, I just want to get alcohol-free and low-alcohol beer into the mainstream. It seems barking mad to me that alcohol-free beer isn't more widely available, and low-alcohol, sort of 2% beer. Why isn't it there? It doesn't make sense, because I'm sure there'd be a demand for it. I've been sort of doing their marketing for them, trying to talk everyone I speak to into trying some alcohol-free beer as well as sort of ordinary beer. What seems to work with people is not getting alcohol-free beer to say drink that instead of ordinary beer, but saying don't see it as an alternative to beer, see it as an alternative to water or sugary drinks or whatever else you can drink.
Adrian's quite annoying actually because he goes around telling so many people they should have alcohol-free beer and to phone me to tell them what to stock. I've ended up with lots of phone calls, but he's got a point. Very slow in this space are restaurants and hotels in particular, and there's some very strange ways that the sector works which stop things improving. So for example, I'm not sure if you've ever been to a big dinner at a hotel. They're always sold on a 3-course meal and half a bottle of wine. If you want a non-alcoholic drink at an evening gala or an awards dinner, you have to go and buy your own. Even at the LGBTQ Equality Awards last year, when they were giving awards to loads of people who were running recovery projects. It was bonkers. So we've got some very old-fashioned ways of doing things where we're not actually questioning the very alcohol-centric nature of our country and providing choice and options for people who might not want to drink. Water is not an alcohol-free option. In fact, it's more important for people that drink. In the same way, caterers have a very standard way of ordering where you get your beer and wine and sell or return, and then somebody in the organisation has to guess how many people might be drinking alcohol-free, and then they put that many units of really warm orange juice into a jug so you can help yourself later on. It's not 1918, it's not breakfast, so I don't quite know what's going on, right? So again, we need to work out all of those touch points with alcohol and all the ways that the catering and the food industry work with alcohol and begin to ask the questions, do you want half a bottle of wine this evening or would you prefer something else? And we've got other options for you. When the availability is there, we know that people pick it. A good example is that we did some experiments with City London runners. They've just set up their own venue that people meet in and end at when they do running. And they couldn't work out why everyone was buggering off home after the run. And that's because nobody wanted to drink after doing all that running. So we worked with them to put an alcohol-free beer on and to see how many people it kept in the venue. And guess what? People stayed because next to water, the healthiest thing you can drink in a pub is an alcohol-free beer. So we know that if you give customers the option, then they will pick it. And if you make it more available and talk about it, people will choose it. Often venues restrict what they order because they think it's too costly for the consumer. An alcohol-free drink can generally cost the same as or sometimes even more than an alcoholic drink, partly because it hasn't got any alcohol in, right? It's actually harder to make a really good flavoured product, harder to keep it stable in the bottle for long enough. but customers will buy it if you give them some choices. And I'm going to just show you a bit of a video from City Pub Group, who have been offering alcohol-free beer for quite a while, and what this has done to their margins.
And I actually today took the time to pull off some numbers, because I thought it's all very well me having my personal opinion, but let's actually see if it's been working and how they were selling back then in comparison to now. And it was really interesting actually. In 2017, so I looked at the last 6 months, which is when we really started deciding to push this. So from June 2017 to December 2017. So at the time, I couldn't get any low ABV products on draft. There may have been some out there, but route to market is another issue within on-trade. And at the time, I couldn't find anything on draft, so that was gone. Within the PPL market, like I said, so the pre-packaged lagers, we now had 10. And in that last 6 months of that year, we sold almost 6,000 units. That equated to over £20,000 worth of sales, so definitely not to be sniffed at. And by the end of 2017, they were making up 4% of our total PPL market, which is pretty big. So we realised that we were onto something, and that it wasn't just my boss. There were people out there that wanted to drink proper, grown-up, low ABV beer. My personal opinion.
So basically, them and even Robinson's, which is a brewer in the north, have found their alcohol-free sales have grown, not at the expense of any of their other products. It seems to be a whole new group of people buying, and they think that might be because people were drinking tap water before, or drivers were just, you know, not picking up a drink when they were coming out. They've got a large rural base. Robinson's have got a large rural base to their venues. So again, they've been finding that there's a great demand from their customers, and when they provide it, it sells. It's a very interesting question about draft there, which of course is draft gives beer visibility on the bar front, and we know that people, particularly people like to hold a pint, particularly people of a particular age, so an older demographic like to hold a pint. There's always been a misconception actually that alcohol-free beer doesn't go well in kegs, but of course with the new technology around kegerators and everything from the Heineken blade, you can now put an alcohol-free beer on the right front of bar and people will now begin to pick it. And it's really important because it's really clear that people who have never drunk before have given up. They will come and ask for J2O, they see it as a compromised drink, they've given up asking for anything. But anyone who's choosing to drink, who may normally drink, are really, really interested in what the options are for them when they go out. And part of what we need to do is also challenge the perceptions of quality. So who remembers Calibre beer? You can still buy Calibre. You can buy it in the bus station in South London alongside the biggest collection of energy drinks I've ever seen in a pub ever, which means every bus must be driven by somebody really off their tits in London, I have to say. It's Calibre and a ton of energy drinks. But they still sell it there. It's the only place I found it. But really, it gave alcohol-free beer a bad name, and loads of people won't pick it up as a result. Because people's behaviour with low and no alcohol drinks is very different. You know, if you'd picked up an alcoholic beer and didn't like it, you'd go, oh, I don't like that beer, I'll try a different one. That isn't the same with an alcohol-free product. You will try an alcohol-free wine and decide you don't like any alcohol-free drinks, right? And you're likely to pick up a brand of alcohol you're not sure if you like or not because it's got alcohol in, but you won't spend £1.59 on an alcohol-free drink unless you know you definitely like it. So consumer behaviour is very different, and we need to find more ways for people to try products. But we also need to get good news out about quality. And I've got a video here of Emma Inch, who's one of the UK's best beer writers.
This is Big Drop, who are really changing the face of alcohol-free beer. One of the reasons why is because, as you'll see, they've got a massive range of beers. In particular, they've got a stout, and the stout, I would recommend you try the stout. If you're a dark beer lover, try the stout. It is amazing. I'm, as well as writing about beer, I also judge beer, and I was judging in the World Beer Awards, and Big Drop Stout gained a prize, a silver, I think, in a category. It wasn't in an alcohol-free category. It was in a full alcohol category. It got the silver medal, and we blind tasted everything, so we didn't know. And it got the silver medal in the World Beer Awards. in the stout category. So yeah, if you're a dark beer lover, really do try that.
So can you imagine an alcohol-free beer in a blind taste test winning silver against full-strength beers? Technology and times have changed. We've got some really interesting drinks out there. They're great drinks in their own right. So we need to look at how we begin to change the way the market works. And I'm really keen to do that through a bit of consumer power. We now give people cards to leave at places along with their tip that ask people whether, that say, well done, you've got a great alcohol-free range, sign up to Club Soda Guide. Or a gentle nudge, a card that says, have you thought about providing more low and no? It would have improved my experience when I'm out. Because for me, this is actually all about equality, right? This is about saying, I want as good an experience as anyone else. I want to have a drink that tastes nice, that goes with my food, that is served well, that is dressed well. I don't just want to be shoved some Coke off of a hose and told that's my lot on an evening out. We need to move some of these products up from the furthest left-hand, far-away fridge. If any of you have been in a pub trying to get an alcohol-free drink, that seems to be where they all are. And begin to train staff to understand the product, give tastings to people, and and when somebody asks for an alcohol-free drink, or even asks straight away for Coke, to know that those people are looking for something different, and say, well, if you're looking for alcohol-free this evening, have you thought about these really beautiful, well-made products, rather than tapping the top of that Coke machine and just serving them a drink out of a hose. So we need to begin to look at techniques to improve the visibility and to make sure that we can get some of the products on the shelves and train the staff well to do that. Finally, the thing that we can do that you've never been able to do with alcohol is to talk about the health benefits. Now, whether you like it or not, when people aren't drinking, they will ask you about calories, they will ask you about sugar content, they will ask you about things that you've never been asked about alcohol before, but they're all really important, and they're likely not to be part of the sales repertoire of your staff, being able to answer some of those questions. The industry's actually got a role to play in this, in the fact that we need to start having a conversation about the new style of techniques to upsell low and no alcohol products. Things like Nicks and Kicks, a lot lower in sugar, a nice bit of cayenne pepper in to give it a bit of a kick. This isn't just about replication of like an alcohol-free beer or wine. It's also about the lower sugar sodas that are aimed at adults and those new wave of drinks coming through. This will be helped if the government could sort out its labelling issue. We're the only country in the world where drinks between 0.05 and 0.5% still have to be called low alcohol. Anything coming from outside the UK can be called alcohol-free. Yet 0.3%, is about the rough alcohol content of a ripe banana. That crappy cartoned orange juice left open for a few days is 0.5%. Kombuchas, vinegars, all those things. It's a naturally occurring amount of alcohol. So 0.5, half of a 1%, is a naturally occurring amount of alcohol. And so in the rest of the world, they're called alcohol-free. Here, drinks made here can't be called alcohol-free if they're between 0.05 and 0.5. Yet in Spain, where alcohol-free beer now represents 14% of the beer market, all of the opinion formers in Spain, the drivers' organisations, pregnancy organisations and so on, got together to promote this as the good choice if you're driving, if you're pregnant, if you're looking to be healthier, and that's represented and shown in their sales. So the industry needs to work to do more on this. So finally, if you've got a venue, here are some really good tips. Just stock it. Give it a little bit more time. It will take a little bit more time for your staff to get used to it, but do stock it. Revisit any traditional formulas you've got around sale and recognise that offer people the option to put what drink preference they have as part of their dietary preferences. And don't jump to conclusions about initial sales. These will take a little bit longer, but it doesn't mean they're not worth having. Do advocate among your peers. I'm still looking for a hotel and a catering company that want to take this and run with it, because I think it's really important. Some very big companies in the City of London, you get Tango as your alcohol-free option if you go to a drinks reception. I mean, we're adults. What's going on, right? Do train your staff. Do equalise any special offers you've got. So if you do beer and a pizza, do an alcohol-free beer and a pizza, or craft soda and a pizza. Don't be shy about equalising those offers and making all your customers feel welcome. Do train your staff. Find ways to give people a taste. I can tell you, if in January you want to do an alcohol-free beer tasting or a botanical tasting, your place will be full because people are really, really interested to try before they buy. And do use point of sale. And I've got a big beef about wholesalers because I do appreciate that they are part of the chain that's stopping you putting better drinks on your stock list. So for me, diversity of choice is good for everyone. There are now a massive range of products out there that you can choose from. I've already got a list in my head now of drinks that would go with a great wood-fired restaurant concept. So there'll be something that goes with every single brand, with every single company, for every single type of occasion. Do start investing some time in exploring it and see it as part of your whole offer to your customer. Because really, it doesn't matter what the strength of the drink is in somebody's glass, it's whether they're paying some money for that and are getting just as good an experience when they visit your venue. So do come and talk to me about it and do go on the guide. Thank you.